Unmuted. This conference is being recorded.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, the Truthful, and the Most Just. I greet all of you once again with the greeting words of peace from the Lord of the worlds. May Allah's Salam Alaikum. We have quite a bit we want to share with you. As you know, it's my job to verify that what those who came before me that the world rejected said was the truth. I'm here to give make clear the messages of Allah that were put in parable. As the book says, Jesus turned water into wine. Most people Paul, he gave hint as to why and what that meant. Jesus turning water into wine. And with the help of Solomon, it become clear. We get over here first and prove something that we just said. In the 3rd chapter of the Holy Quran and the 81st verse, maybe the 80th verse in some of y'all's book. It's entitled Section 9, Covenant of the Prophets. You'll notice the first time Allah mentioned that was in the book of Genesis to Abraham. He said, I will make my covenant between me and you, Abraham. Huh? That's why when people start talking about the Holy Bible and the Holy Quran and the belief in it, that wasn't to happen until the coming of the Son of righteousness. It was not revealed in a day. It was revealed on a night of majesty. And the night of majesty is longer than 1,000 months. And the messengers and the word descended in it. Yes. And if you wanted to know how long it was going to last, of that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. That's what, so it didn't tell you how long. It simply said peace. The night of majesty is until the rising of the morning. Rising of what morning? When the sun is rising, you know it's morning. Unto you that fear my name shall the Son of righteousness arise with healing, salvation in his wings. Yes. Wings lift up the bird. The Holy Scriptures lift up the Son of Man. And so it is written in the 81st verse. It says, and when Allah made a covenant through the prophets, notice, this is a revelation and a prophecy that during the time of the prophets was not yet finished, was not fulfilled. But after the Holy Quran was collected together and put in book form after the prophet wasn't here no more, then after a cessation of messengers, meaning a long pause, Elijah was raised and sent. And he said, the prophet said, thus saith the Lord. He said, I say, here is the Lord. Yeah. That's what a deliverer does. When he finally get the baby there, he say, here's the baby. So, so once the baby was delivered and the dragon was waiting to swallow the baby, he gave the baby enough wisdom that the baby wouldn't trust in them who was waiting to mislead him. He as good as said to the baby, look, if you want to be uh, taught by Allah, don't go to them. You read the scriptures. Huh? What if I had went to them asking them to teach me the Quran and teach me the Bible? They'd have misled me. Like they did WD. Like they did everybody who trusted them. You know, you had to be pretty dumb, because the first thing you should have asked them was, if you got guidance for me, how come y'all can't agree on what the book is talking about? Why you a Sunni and you a Shiite? There is no division in Islam. But they didn't have sense enough to ask that, because they really didn't want to be righteous. They were glad when the messenger, he said that. He said, many times you wish that Elijah Muhammad and Master Farad Muhammad was dead, so that you could cling on to your devils. That's what he said. Huh? Some of y'all sitting in here might have times wish that I wasn't here, so you could go and do what you was doing. Because being righteous in a world full of evil is hard. And doing wrong is so easy. And nobody would say nothing. What did that boy on the Matrix Cipher, what did he say? I know this steak isn't real. And I know that the Matrix is telling me that it's succulent. And he said, I have one thing to say: ignorance is bliss. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not finna roll over and go back to sleep. I'm woke, and I'm glad that I'm woke. And as far as all of this opposition out here, the messenger said a Muslim thrives on opposition. Our daddies knew that. How many of y'all saw 5 Heartbeats? You remember his daddy looked at him and say, you ain't nothing. You ain't never gonna be nothing. And cause I ain't nothing. Is that, you remember? But he said something else. He told him, you ain't boo-boo. Cause I ain't boo-boo. And his son gave him a harsh look. And his mama asked his daddy, why you tell him that? He said, because I want him to be better than me. Do you understand? And so by telling him he wasn't going to be nothing, he was using psychology on him. He wanted him to be saying in his mind, I'm going to show you. Yeah. Muslims thrive on opposition. That's the truth. The black man by nature is a Muslim. Why is that? Because he was the first man. And He's God. And naturally, he submits to his own will. He's a Muslim. So God himself is a Muslim. That's what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told people. How you know that that's true? People say, you just that ain't Islam. The Holy Quran says, if we had pleased, we could have given every soul its guidance. But my word was, I will fill hell with jinn and men. Meaning what? I can't go against my word. A Muslim's word is bond, and bond is life. And you can't trip him with his word either. Because when you break yours, then the man that he gave his word to, he finds out you wasn't that man. Then his word is rescinded because you rescinded it by your actions. As Allah told Noah, he told Abraham, he said, even though I promised you that my covenant will be between me and you and your seed, but it ain't with the wrongdoers now. Don't try to use my words against me. I'm gonna discover something wrong with to try to trick me. Folks can sure tell you what you told them you was gonna do while forgetting what they told you they was gonna do. Is that right? So it says, certainly, when Allah made this covenant, he took a vow from them. And he told you what the covenant is. The Son of Man shall be delivered into the hands of what? What I've given you of book and wisdom. Then a messenger comes to you. He it is who sent his messenger. With the guidance and the true religion, that he may argue with them and overcome the religions, all of them. Who doing that? Even in this world, if it talk like a duck, got feathers like a duck, and quack like a duck, even though you ain't ever seen one, you just heard it described. Well, that must be the duck. You hear anybody able to hold a candle in an argument against me with religion? All they can say is they don't like what I'm teaching. I got a letter here one of the sisters sent me. She said, may Allah, salam alaikum. Son of man, this month's Muhammad Speaks newspaper on page 7 says you are not telling the truth. As if I care. I don't care what these people say about me behind my back, while I'm giving them the opportunity to say it to my face and give me some proof. I'm not the first one that people did like that. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was accused of teaching other than the truth about Islam. Matter of fact, they said what he was teaching was not Islam. He ain't no messenger. That's what they said. He didn't lose no sleep over it, I promise you. I sleeps good. Yes, sir. Do I look like I'm all wore out and tired from losing sleep because you don't believe in me? No, you ain't got to believe. Allah didn't tell me to make you believe. He said, son of man, they rebellious. So give them warning whether they hear you or don't. Ain't that what he said? And now, did Mary believe in Jesus? Thank you. All right. Now that fixed that, didn't it? Yeah. So it's plenty of parents don't believe that their children is nothing special. But if God tell him he's something special, you had better listen to that man. So he says, then a messenger comes to you, verifying that which is with you. This is me, verifying what was with. Now remember now, in the beginning was what? And the word was what? The messenger said, we all are Allah. We got you all messed up. We done got a whole lot of people messed up. That's a little bitty word, ain't it? But it sure can make you think you involved in something that ain't got nothing to do with you. Huh? He used to tell the slave, we got to go get our crops out. Is that right? And this slave said, yes, sir. Yes, sir, boss. We got to get them out. But who was out there getting them out? And whose crops was it? And that's my point. That's why they got mad at Ali. Said, we have to go to Vietnam to fight our enemy. He said, he ain't no enemy of mine. Thanks to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's why they put him in jail. They put the messenger in jail during World War II and told him why they was putting him in there. They said, now, not that what you teaching is not right. We're not putting you in jail for what you're teaching. But the president, Roosevelt, don't want you out teaching it while we are prosecuting the war between us and Germany and Japan, lest they listen to you and we can't get nobody to go. Do you understand? Yeah. And the messenger said, he told him, well, if you ain't put me in jail for the teaching, then why you put me in jail? You know, they double talking it. But he was teaching it at an inconvenient time. You understand? And so, whatever he think he might plan that he might do to me, he gonna find out that it ain't gonna happen. That ain't gonna go. You keep your hands off of me. Just the thought of it will get you in trouble. You know why? Because Allah said, whosoever looketh upon a woman to lust after her hath committed it in his heart. So he gonna hold you responsible for what you're thinking. That's right, because the thought of doing something is what occurs before it is done. Do you understand? All right. Now, there's it's more to the meaning of that than it sounds like. That ain't just no passing thought. It's the one that you sincerely intend and would like to carry out. Do you understand? As the messenger said, this one that I represent He said he tune up on you, tell you what you're thinking about, and then let you make progress with it, or he can stop you. Do you understand? So this is kind of like your immune system. It's not a conscious thing. It's an unconscious knowing. Do you understand? Yeah. That's how the protective system of your body works. It don't depend on the conscious mind. It depends on the one that don't ever go to sleep. You understand? I have to make it real for you. I don't want you to think, why you think I'm able to walk around here like I walk around here in Mississippi and anywhere else I want to go? I didn't just start doing this. Some of these brothers been around me for how long? When I used to drive up to Michigan and wasn't but 2 or 3 y'all. Huh? You remember that? You know, there's been plenty of people wanting to do something to me. Did they ever put their hands on me? There you go. Brothers, no. We remember Grambling? Yeah. So, you ain't worried about these people. They can't do nothing to you. Allah is with us now. And if God be for you, who is there that can even be against you? I could read some things to you right out the book. I will if we have time. But first, I wanted to make sure you understood that I'm doing what this says, verifying the truth of these books. Huh? When I tell people that we the one that was in bondage for 400 years and God promised to judge the nation that we served, do you hear anybody say that ain't true? You hear anybody say that's talking about Israel? Before they could get it out of their mouth, I make Israel bear witness. We never been in bondage to any man. This was after Moses. They're talking to Jesus. Huh? Well, then who is these people? Then you go over to Revelation and it says that it's spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. It wasn't even talking about no Egypt literally. It was talking about, since Egypt was at one time the seat of knowledge, it was the cradle of civilization. America now is like that. So she's spiritually called Egypt and Sodom. Them sis, they got power now. Huh? Is that right? What was they doing with Lot? Did we not forbid you? Do that sound like somebody who had no power? We forbid you from entertaining guests around here. Is that what they told Lot? And Lot, they said, bring them out here. Order of the top sissy. I know y'all get mad. You said, they gonna get you. Yeah. They thought they was gonna get them men that was visiting Lot. And found out that they the one got. Huh? Them men said, no, we gonna stay in the street. Did that sound like they were scared? So this is the Sodom and this is the Egypt. But I'll tell you this, it's actually more tolerable for these than for them who were the recipients originally of the Holy Scriptures. And look how they acting. These people over here got more excuse than them. Well, they had never had no prophet. So it's written, if the works that were done in you had been done in Sodom, it would have remained to this day. How you know that's true? Look at the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. They kept them original documents preserved. Not just copied them. Kept the original ones preserved. Huh? What does that say about their potential? That's why I'm here. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said things about it. I'm gonna let you. But as it's written, I was given to them. Said, then a messenger comes to you. What they said, to those whom we have given the book, they recognize not it, but him. As the messenger said, there's a new book. And that new book is the one that we all have to give ear to. Huh? It says, he placed 1 foot on land and 1 foot on water. Yes. I remember people say, I got half a mind. That's why you do all that wrong you do. Because you got half a mind. I got a whole mind. I am a natural creature and a spiritual creature that has a mind to match. You are natural and a spiritual creature that have half a mind. You said it, I didn't. You ain't never heard nobody say that. So you can't get mad at me for saying it, right? Well, come on and I'll give you the rest of it. Do you understand? That's the only way you're going to ever understand me, is that you got to know what motivates me to do and say the things that I do. And you ain't never going to understand that with half a mind. The natural mind cannot discern spiritual things. Do you understand? Okay. So it says in the book of Isaiah, you ain't got to turn to it because you know it's in there. For unto us a child is born. Unto us, well, no women prophets. So who was they talking to? Them was men. I'm the Son of Man. They asked Jesus, who is this Son of Man that must be raised up? That's what they asked him. Didn't they ask him that? Did he say, I am? Yeah. That's for all the smart Alex. So let's go. It says, then a messenger comes to you, verifying that which is with you, When you see one that can give you understanding of what's with you, you know he couldn't have had it. To him whom Allah don't give light, he ain't got none. And if he got it, the revelation of this book, there's no doubt in it. It's from the Lord of the worlds. Huh? All right. Do we understand? All right. We know more than we telling, ain't we? So let's pay good attention. Listen to this. It says, the devil will say, when the matter is decided, surely Allah promised you a promise of truth. And I promised you. Politicians do that all the time, don't you? See, the devil said he's going to sit in the sides of the north and be like who? Sitting up here talking about, well, we need a change of regime over there. Who is that talking? The one who propped up the Shah of Iran, the one who propped up Saddam Hussein, the one who sits in the sides of the north doing what? Acting like he's the big kingfish over everybody. Is that right? Okay. He promises you, and he only do it to deceive you. Now, you remember I told you that if a white man was standing up saying what I'm saying, I mean, it's been proven once when Master Farad Muhammad was saying the white man is the devil and that kind of thing. Black people didn't never question or argue with him. When he raised up over 25,000. And after he found and raised and sent Elijah, all of them that was listening to him who really didn't know him, but was in it for what they could get out of it. Daddy Grace, Father Divine, all them folks, former students of Master Farad Muhammad. Daddy Grace. You got all these people out here, Malachi Z. York and some of these other folks. It's the same thing. They was listening to the messenger and took his teaching and started doing all kind of stuff with it. But that's, envy and jealousy at work. But envy and jealousy ain't had nothing to do with me. Duty is what I'm keeping. I'm keeping my duty. And so the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said some things that you need to hear. And I want to remind you of what he said. Then I'm going to let you see that what he said was the truth.
White race have been continuously to do evil and lead the black man into filth and evil. They are today while they are in judgment. They occupy the utmost night and day. Every hour, 24 hours, to get you to yield to evil and filth. Some of them in there is against it. They're not speaking out against the evil doings of themselves. But they are absolutely made.
Brother told me that the camera lens is fuzzy. Is the picture coming out clear or fuzzy? Huh? Well, can you do something about that? Okay. Put it on manual and zoom in and zoom back out and then put it back on auto. Make sure that that lens is clean. I just said zoom in and zoom out and then put it back on manual. Get it clear up? You got it on auto now? What's that other camera up there? Okay. Now, let's back this up a bit.
Every hour, 24 hours, to get you to yield have been continuous all up to life. Some of us unearthing themselves. These wicked white race have been continuously to do evil and lead the black man into filth and evil. They are today while they are in judgment. They are trying the utmost night and day. Every hour, 24 hours, to get you to yield to evil and filth. Some of them in there is against it. They're not speaking out against the evil doings of themselves. But they are absolutely made of evil. They are not people that have some good in them and evil.
And before you say That ain't so. Jesus said the same thing. There ain't none good but one, and that's God. And Jesus told him and said, you are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. They wasn't made with some good in them. They was made a murderer and a liar. But now, the one that there was no hope for out of justice, Allah told him, he said, now you go and do all your work. Says, and on you, I will respite you. Even though that curse is on you, I'm going to respite you. I'm going to protect you from the detrimental effect of it until the day of judgment. In the day of judgment, there won't be no more curse if you listen to the Son of righteousness. That's right. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the devil from his sin by changing his mind. Not to save the devil, to destroy the devil, but to save that vessel that the devil was in from the sinful mind that we put in it. You understand? If he let me. If you don't let me, well, that's your fault. Ain't my fault. Can't no doctor do nothing for you if you won't let him. Now, at some of them here and there, they speaking out now against the evil doing of themselves. That's what he said. Let you hear it one more time.
Sin continues to do evil and lead the black man into filth and evil. They are today, while they are in judgment, they are trying their utmost, night and day, every hour, 24 hours, to get you to yield to evil and filth. Some of them, here and there, if they catch it, they're not speaking out. They get the evil done of themselves.
Now, let's go to this. I want you to see the truth. So, just give me a minute here. Now, listen to this.
Telling you that I think it is probably a good idea, and I try to give this advice at most of my talks. It's probably a very good idea when somebody stands in front of you and is proclaimed by virtue of their bio and by virtue of their curriculum vitae, their resume, that part of which is read to you, by way of the nice comments made about them by others, proclaimed to be an expert. It's probably a very good idea to ask yourself why it is that you're listening to that person and not somebody else. In this culture, we are led to believe that if someone stands before you, a proclaimed expert, that it must be because they are indeed the brightest bulb in the box, that they know something that the other people don't know. I am not standing listening to me because I am the most informed person in the country on racism, or white privilege, not because I am the best speaker on those subjects. I am fairly good, and I intend to demonstrate that to you amply in the next hour. It is not because I'm the best writer on the subject, though I am okay with that as well. It is instead because I, and I know this, fit the aesthetic that is needed on too many campuses and too many communities around the country in order to come in and to give this talk. The thing that I am going to say tonight, or at least very little, originated in my head. Nothing, or at least very little, of what I say tonight is in fact new. Almost every single thing that I'm going to say this evening is wisdom that has been shared with me either patiently or sometimes not so patiently by people of color who have in almost every instance forgotten more about the subjects of racism and white privilege since breakfast yesterday than I will likely ever know. And yet they will not be asked to give 85 engagements around the country this year or next on this subject, not because they have not the wisdom to do it, but because privilege, the subject that I'll deal with tonight, bestows upon me that advantage. And so as a matter of responsibility and accountability, I have to own that up front, so that when you go away from this evening thinking to yourself, my goodness, that was good. And I'm sure that's my subliminal way to tell you, you're gonna think it's just great. And when you go away from here thinking that I have filled your heads with all this great knowledge and wisdom, please know that it is not mine. And the next time you hear it from a person of color, the next time it is shared with you, for those in the audience, particularly who are white, the next time it is shared with you by a person of color, as it will be and as it has been in one form or another, please listen to it. And
some of them here and there now speaking out. The president said the American people voted for a divided government, not a dysfunctional government. And they made light of what he said, didn't they? Until Mitch McConnell came back and said it. Then it was profound. Huh? Do you think white people know anything about racism? Then you're thinking wrong. That's the same as asking, do you think that the flu virus know anything about the flu? The flu virus don't know nothing about that. The ones who suffer from it know about it. Why you think white folks? Now he telling you this now. They don't see no race problem. They don't see no problem, no racism. You know why? Because they ain't the one suffering from it. They the one that's the virus. They inflicting it on us. Huh? Finally, we got one that's honest enough to own up to it. So listen to him. Just well to be honest, because everybody trying to get it off of them now.
please know that it is from that source that I get virtually all of my material. We will know that we have made progress only on that day when a person of color can get up and give the talk that I'm about to give and be taken half as seriously as I expect to be taken. It's interesting to see so many people come out to these events, because to hear some people tell it, you would think that this conversation was almost wholly unnecessary. To pay attention to the American political process and what the candidates for this nation's highest office have to say and not say about the issues that are of importance to them, and thus we are to presume importance to the nation, you would get the impression that the issue of race, that the issue of racism, that the issue of discrimination, and certainly that the issue of white racial privilege were non-existent issues, that they were really no importance or very little importance, because you will not hear and have not heard any of the candidates for presidency of the United States in either party of whatever political ideology make this an issue. Yes, they talk about poverty, and occasionally they talk about schooling and education. They talk about healthcare. They talk about all of those things, but not once have any of those candidates tried to directly connect the role that racism, the role that racial discrimination, the role that institutional racial oppression and white privilege play in regard to healthcare, in regard to housing, in regard to schooling, in regard to poverty. It is as if those issues exist in a vacuum and have no relationship to color, have no relationship to race, have no relationship to a history of racial subordination. What does it say about our nation's political process and about our nation's political and social culture that none of these candidates for office has seen fit to tell the American public the following things, all of which you would think would be campaign issues of some importance, at least to some people, and yet they won't say them? Why is it that none of them mention that it was last year, 2006, not 1996, not 1986, not 1976 or 66, but 2006, which witnessed the highest number of race-based housing discrimination complaints in recorded history? The Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968, the year of my birth, and yet it was not 1968 that witnessed the highest level of discrimination complaints based on race. It was 38 years later, in 2006. What does it say about our culture and the politicians, the choices we've been given for leader of the so-called free world, that none of these candidates sees fit to mention as they talk about healthcare, which subject they do talk about with some regularity? What does it say that none of them have seen fit to mention the research that was published in the American Journal of Public Health in 2004, which had looked at 10 years of excess mortality data for African Americans from 1991 to 2000, looking at the number of Black folks who had died above and beyond the number that would have died but for their Blackness, in effect, and the social and economic conditions that ascribe and essentially adhere to Blackness in this country. And what they found in that study, which received almost no media attention, again, published in an academic journal, not read by the average American, not read by political candidates, read by doctors and people who research the healthcare industry, but that's about it. This study found that between 1991 and 2000, there were almost 1 million Black people in this country who died, who would not have died had they merely been white and had the average healthcare quality and access of a typical white person in this country, had they been living in neighborhoods like white neighborhoods in which the levels of exposure to toxicity had been as low as it is in the typical white neighborhood, as opposed to excess exposure to toxics.
Now, here's a man telling you why the white Congress studied trying to repeal Obamacare. Huh? Now, he was talking this in 2007. This was before President Obama got in office. All of them knew the statistics and how many of us were dying simply because we were not white. Not because we couldn't have, been cured or helped. It's because didn't nobody care. Now understand something. If you think that I'm standing up here whining to you white folks that's listening to me about not taking care of me and my people, that's you got the wrong understanding of what I'm doing. I'm just trying to show you why we got to get away from these people. I'm trying to show you why, with all these Black physicians and Black nurses and Black healthcare providers, we ain't got no business waiting on these people to do nothing for us. We should be building our own hospitals. And then really healing our people instead of exchanging one sickness and one disease or one crippling thing for another just to keep us coming back. Like them shade tree mechanics do. You start going to them and you never even give it a second thought. That every time one thing get fixed, a week later something else done broke down. And it just keep on happening. I'm so glad I found you. That's what we say. And don't realize that he glad he found you. So now you hear him owning up to what's being done to us by his people. Isn't it strange that nobody ever brought him on? No CNN, huh? MSNBC, Fox News, huh? Any of y'all ever heard of him before? Yes, that's Tim Wise. He's on the internet. They ain't had him on there for no length of time. Well, just listen.
Pollutants, etc., in black and brown spaces. Almost 1 million excess dead people, in this case, black folks who wouldn't have died had the system of healthcare access and exposure to toxics been equal between white folks and black folks. How is 1 million dead black people not news? You see, if James Byrd gets dragged to death behind a truck in Jasper, you will hear about that, and well, you should. If one individual is the victim of a vicious state crime, you will hear about that, and well, you should. But if 1 million people die, not because of bigotry, not because of hatred, not because of some white supremacist organization, but because of systemic and institutionalized injustice, you will not hear anything. How is it not news? And why are no candidates mentioning that according to the Department of Justice, in a study released in 2004, black and Latino males are 3 times more likely than white males to have their cars stopped and searched for drugs, even though white males are 4.5 times more likely to actually have drugs on us on the occasion when we are stopped. Now think about that. Because that suggests that racial profiling is not just racist, we know that, that is redundant. But it's also pretty stupid ass law enforcement. Or is it? Because I guess it's only stupid if you think the purpose of the war on drugs is actually to get drugs off the street. Because if that were the purpose, putting aside whether or not we ought to deal with a medical and a health problem known as drug addiction with war metaphors in the first place. Different lecture for a different night. Even if we assume that that is a good policy, let us be clear that that is not what we're fighting. We're not fighting a war on drugs because the first rule of any war is to go where the enemy is. And if the white folks are the ones with the drugs in the car and the black and brown folks are the ones getting stopped, the people fighting this war are either supremely stupid or just have really bad short-term memory. Like they keep forgetting, oh damn, I pulled over another guy named Martinez. God. I keep forgetting it's white people, it's white people. Damn it, I gotta write a note and put it on the dashboard. I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe that's it, Or maybe it's something else. I do trainings with law enforcement, not a hell of a lot, for reasons you can probably guess. And I ask law enforcement officers, what's the first thing you think when you see a young black or Latino man drive the car in all, without fail and without exception, will say drug dealer. I then ask them, what's the first thing you think when you see a young white male, same age, driving the same kind of car in that same community? And they will say, without exception, without hesitation, without fail, spoiled little rich kid, daddy probably bought him a car. Keep in mind, we've been together for about 90 seconds of the workshop at this point. We have 2 hours left, and they have just outed themselves as racist because what they have said is that they are making snap judgments on the basis of only color that work to the detriment of people of color, the benefit of white people. We still got 2 hours to go, so it's going to be fun from that point forward. These are people sworn to protect and to serve. It's right there on the car, right there on the side of the car. And in the first 90 seconds, they are acknowledging these racial biases. How is that not an issue? How is it not an issue that according to that Justice Department report, while black and brown folk are having their wheel wells ripped apart on the side of the road, their trunks splayed open, their dashboards ripped apart in the search for drugs which aren't even there, white people like me, notice I said like me because I'm not trying to tell you anything about me that you don't need to know, and your limitations has not yet expired, are driving by the roadblock with a trunk full of weed, and we're just waiting. Because we're not suspected, therefore we're not detected, therefore we're not punished. How is that not an issue? How is it not an issue that the typical white family in America, thanks to this history, this legacy of institutionalized oppression for some and advantage and privilege for others, how is it not news that the average white family in America, not the average rich white family, the average white family has 12 times the accumulated net worth of the average African family, 8 times the accumulated net worth of the average Latino family, in large measure because those white average families that had parents or grandparents.
Now, before I let him continue, I just want you to know that I learned to do this from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad once invited the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan to come and address his rally, his meeting. Because the truth don't care who tell it. At the time when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was trying to get us to separate from white people, the Ku Klux Klan was honest enough to tell black people that he's telling you right. We don't care about you. But you want to live in a dream world. When I showed you that Tuskegee Airman thing, that clip where he said, "Are you stupid? Are you people stupid? Don't you know how we treat you people? Your country? Well, you don't have no country." Zoom right by us. We get selective deafness. Here, you sit here and giggle and go on. That ain't funny. That man bearing witness to the truth that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and myself been trying to tell you. And he was doing it in 2007. Yes.
Yes, you right.
Wait a minute. No, I don't need that. No, you be quiet and listen. I know I'm right. I don't stand up and tell you something that's wrong. And there is no but. No, I'm gonna tell you something. Don't try to soft stroke me and confuse nothing that I'm saying. I'm not here to get soft stroked or what they flattered by none of y'all. I'm only trying to show you that this is the reason why it affects me. Mute your phone back or I'm gonna put you out. Yes, your phone. So, you know, you running around here, it seems like some of y'all take pride in your stupidity. You don't know, and you don't listen when someone trying to help you to know. You're not gonna have no excuse. I'm just telling you, you ain't gonna have no excuse. I done presented, and I'm presenting too much evidence for you to come up later talking about you didn't know. So, but here, this man is just telling the truth. Now, won't nobody call him a racist because he telling white people how low down they are. Why? Because he one of them who recognizes that they better hurry up and change. Look, you think white people don't know what the prophecy of what's going to happen to this country after that 400 years? And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. This is the judgment now. People trying to figure out why everybody telling on themselves, everybody telling stuff. When people come out lying, you remember they was trying to slander Dr. Cosby. And then this woman comes out, Janice Dickinson, talking about, I'm glad all these ladies came out because this is proof that I got raped, which goes along with her, we got power. And because we're the stronger race. So if enough white women come out and say that a black man raped them, who you gonna believe? Huh? So that's proof because a whole lot of white women come out and say hateful things about Dr. Cosby. But she told us and realized that's what she was telling us. They done kind of tone that stuff down now, ain't they? But we see it now. We see them. And that's what they've been doing. Put all these white police officers in our community and just arrest you on a humbug. In other words, on a lie. And do what? Trump up a lot of false charges and make it look like black men are just criminals. We want all of them out of our community. And if, I mean, since he hates us, you would think he'd be glad to go, huh? You don't even have to take black people and take them out of white communities because ain't no black officers in the white community acting a fool. Right? But you take all them black officers that's over in your community and you put them over here in ours. Let them patrol us and let yours patrol you. You notice ain't nobody saying nothing about that. You know why? Because that doesn't make too much sense. You can't stop people from being racist, but you can put them in a position where they can't harm you so quick. Take them out of our community. How in the world you gonna keep the peace, keep our community safe when you the one in there making them unsafe? Just your presence in there. Agitating people. Huh? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Where they show real police stops and what goes on. Well, this party, a wedding party, had a party. They were drinking, smoking.
White folks.
White folks.
Yeah, they do all kind of stuff, and ain't no police taking them to jail.
No, but the thing was on this show, the police had a taser, and the aggressor was just kept coming to the police, but he kept tasing them, and he just falling down. So why they didn't do that?
Well, they ain't gonna do that to you. A white man can have a gun pointing at him and they'll tell him, drop it. You can have a water pistol and you dead. Because they thought it was a gun. We want all they behinds out of our community. That's what. And that's why they don't want you to listen to Bill Cosby, because he made the mistake of saying that you should emulate the Muslims. They know what we are taught. They know exactly what we are taught. You're not going to shoot us down and go have no coffee and donut. Not you. Your buddy might that heard about it. But no. Well, the right of self-defense is in every creature. And you're not going to murder our babies and laugh and talk about it. And that's why they don't want you to listen to nobody who would tell you to be like the Muslim, the black Muslim. I'm not talking about them people that run around here chopping people's heads off and all that kind of stuff because they disagree with them. Man disagree with you? Well, then he disagree. I just got to notice that somebody called me a liar. Say, I'm lying. Let me see here. How do you read? It says, son of man, it says, and it says you are lying when you say you are Allah's chosen. It says this is transcribed from the messenger's tape, warning to the hypocrites. As though, I'm not the one that's the hypocrite. I'm out here saying and standing on what I say. If they thought I was lying, didn't I offer them $20,000? Won't they come in here and share with us the evidence that they got? Huh? Well, what am I supposed to do? I mean, I ain't got no time to be going back and forth with nobody that ain't him. Don't even bring me no gossip. But you know, if them hypocrites had anything that they could attack me with, they'd have been done brought it out. Who is that? That fella that's got that, what's that boy name up there? Got that in Detroit that got him a paper out calling it the Muhammad Speaks. Levi. Is that Levi's paper? That man ain't even know, I ain't got no time for that. And, that man done been in my face grinning and going on, then get behind my back and talk. I ain't got no time for that. Anything I say, I can say it to your face. I ain't the kind of person who go and write something about you that I'm not willing, if you give me the opportunity, to come and talk with you about it. Huh? A Muslim that's a coward is not a Muslim. So I'm just looking at these people, and but this man, he had a lot to say. Let you hear some more of what he had to say. But that's the difference in me and them. I don't have to love you to listen to what you have to say, to weigh what you have to say. And if it's valid, I'm not one who's careful to agree on the truth. I don't have to be careful to agree on the truth. I just naturally agree on truth. I'm careful that I don't agree on falsehood. Now, it's many things. He ain't got no solution to our problem, but he is acknowledging that his people is part of the problem. I'm not looking to him to guide me out from under him. And as long as I think he can guide me out from under him, I'll never be out. I don't need him. Allah is sufficient for me. Haven't you noticed? I told you, don't make no difference who I talk to. I'm immediately, I can come down to their level. They can't come up to mine, though. And that's not me condescending. That's me being who I am. I'm the Son of Man. The sun's light can reach you at your, but you can't reach the light at its source. It wasn't made for you to reach it. It was made to reach you. No man ascended up to heaven but he who came down from there. You see, the light comes down to you from the sun, but you can't go up to it. Do you understand? So I find out who I'm talking to, and then I speak to them on a level that I know they understand. You see, and that's not something that I just learned how to do. That's something that was in me that Allah put there for me to be able to do.
And so even if they didn't have much, even if they were not rich, nonetheless were able to procure a little house, a little property, maybe with an FHA or a VA loan in the middle of the 20th century, loans that were all but off limits to people of color as they gave hundreds of billions of dollars worth of assets and equity to those who were white. So that even white working class families on average, even white families with less than $15,000 a year in annual income, which depending on family size, that is technically legally the poverty limit. And yet the average white family with low income, less than $15,000, has the same average net worth as the typical black family with $60,000 or more in annual income. So that even those African-American families that are professional, good jobs, occupational status, good educations, et cetera, and pretty good incomes are still in worse shape in terms of wealth and assets, material goods, which are really what matter in the long run. Your income, if you're dependent on that, you're one paycheck away from nothing. If you don't have assets, if you don't have wealth, if you don't have something accumulated, your income means very little. In the case of an economic downturn, and these working class white families who are struggling, make no mistake about it, nonetheless are on average going to be better off than those black families with 4 times as much annual pay. How can that not be an issue? I'm suggesting to you that the failure to talk about race, the failure to talk about racism and inequality on the basis of color, feeds the denial that is already far too prevalent among the white community. And having been white all of my life, I've been surrounded by that denial for a very long time. A few years back, white Americans were asked whether or not we believed that racial discrimination was still a significant national problem for people of color, or whether it was just a problem, you know, like junk mail, wrong phone number, 2 in the morning, you can't get back to sleep, it's raining and you want to go outside for a jog, you know, a problem, but one you'll get over, you know. Whether it wasn't much of a problem, wasn't a problem at all, we just weren't sure. They also asked black and brown folk this question. Folks of color, it won't surprise you, said, yes, it is a significant problem, actually, and not just because I read about it in the sociology textbook. I actually have lived it and would be more than happy to tell you what kind of problem it's been, but these were pollsters, man, they didn't care about that. They just wanted the yes or no, then they were on to the next house. And they asked white folks, is it or is it not a significant national problem, racial discrimination for people of color and against people of color? And only 6% 6 out of 100 said yes, that it was a significant national problem. Just to give you an idea of how bad that is, I would have you compare it to a survey taken a few years earlier where approximately 12% of white Americans said we believe there was a fairly decent chance to be alive. I don't know how good you are at math. I'm not very good myself, but that's a ratio that I can calculate. What that means is that white Americans are twice as likely to believe that Elvis might still be alive than we are to believe what people of color tell us they experience on a fairly regular basis. That is denial so profound as to boggle the mind, but there it is. And the people who are saying it are not mean-spirited, they're not hard-hearted, they're not bad people.
The reason that white people don't believe it when we tell them how much we suffer at their hands is because they don't care. As far as they're concerned, you just whining. We done gave you this program. We done gave you that program. And they look at us like they look at an old car or something that they shined up or whatnot, and it still ain't, it still sputters or whatnot, or an old horse that they done put out the pasture, and he keep on leaving where they put him and doing something else. They pretty soon say we're gonna get him, sell him to a glue factory. They don't care about us. And when you don't care about someone, then even when they express a grievance to you, you turn a deaf ear. I have observed that. People that don't care about you, they don't have to listen to you. Just telling you. I mean, that's it. There's race problem. Ain't no race problem here. Racists don't see themselves as that. They don't see themselves. An oppressor never sees himself as an oppressor. He sees himself as doing what need to be done in order to keep things going. How do I know that? I pay attention. I observe. They don't care nothing about us. Well, naturally, more of them, and you can get more of them to say Elvis is still alive than you could to say that there's a race problem in America. A problem is only a problem generally to those who have it or those who empathize with someone who has it. But if a person cannot empathize and feel hurt for you, let me show you. The Holy Quran already answered that question for us, because it told us something that we've been ignoring and been catching hell for ignoring it ever since we've been ignoring it. Pardon me. Just give me a minute. In the 24th chapter, just a moment. It says in the 3rd chapter, in the 118th verse, it says, "O you who believe, take not for intimate friends others than your own people. They spare no pains to cause you loss." How many times? Now, taking into consideration the statistics that this white man just shared about over 1 million black people died simply because they didn't get proper health care. Huh? Taking that into consideration, now is it easier to see what the Congress feels about us? Because what? They want us to die, right? They don't want you to have no means of redressing illness and disease. They either want you dead or in jail. Huh? Okay, let's read on. They spare no pains to cause you loss. They love that which distresses you. What happened with all of these? You notice, every time they see us, one of their officers murder our children, they turn him loose. They love that which distresses you. Huh? It says, vehement hatred has already appeared from out of their mouths, and that conceal is greater still. I remember when Minister Farrakhan was relating something that the messenger said to him about this old white man that was barely making it across the street. And he said, you see, the messenger looked at him and said, you see that man there? Minister Farrakhan said, yes, the apostle. He said, if you could read his mind, what he's thinking when he looks at you, you would die of a heart attack. It says, what their hearts conceal is greater still. Indeed, we have made the messages clear to you, if you understand. Yeah. What is that to say? Ain't no way you could understand this unless we made it clear to you. I'm making it clear to you now. And using the white man to show you. Okay. Let's go back and Look at some more.
I firmly believe that most people are good people. I could be wrong about this, but I have two little girls, 8, 6, and 4, and I choose as a parent to believe that most people are good. If you have evidence to the contrary, keep it to yourself. I do not want to know it or hear it this evening. What I do know is that those individuals who said that, as well-meaning as they may have been, that we really didn't see it as a significant problem, aren't new in their denial. See, it's one thing for young people to think that the problem is solved. I almost get that. I almost understand it, because if you're under the age of 25, maybe even under the age of 35, what you know, what we tend to know, younger people, about this history, about this, what we see in that footage every MLK Day, or maybe during Black History Month. If I were to ask you, do you believe that folks of color had equal opportunity and were treated equally in this country in 1963? Or whether or not Black children were treated equally in schools and had equal educational opportunity in 1962, I know right now that no one in here would say, well, of course, naturally they did. 1963, that was a damn good year to be Black or brown in America. What are you talking about? Everyone, regardless of your position about 2007, would quickly acknowledge how bad it was back in the day, because it's no sweat off your back. 44, 45 years later, it's easy to talk about how bad it was, but now see, here's the trick. What do you think white folks said when those very questions were put to them in 1963 and in 1962? At a time when the apartheid system in this country was very much in full effect. It was before the Civil Rights Act, before the Voting Rights Act, before the Fair Housing Act. In retrospect, we can all look back and say how profoundly unequal it was. How profoundly unequal it was. And yet when white folks were asked, some of them are parents, are grandparents, great uncles, great aunts, these ancestors of ours, were asked the very same question in 1963. Do you think that people of color, didn't use that term, said racial minorities. Do you think that racial minorities are treated equally in your community? And 80% of white folks said yes. In 1962, when Gallup asked, do you think that Black children receive equal educational opportunity in your community? 90% approximately of white folks said yes.
Yeah. They were treated equally. All of them was catching hell. And they was getting the same no good education. All of them was getting equal education. You got to know how to ask the question. Then you can make them loud. It's not even something you have to think about if you ask, is Black people and white people getting equally educated in America? The evidence is right out in front of you. If you had equal knowledge and understanding to white people couldn't oppress you. If you're being oppressed, you obviously are not getting equal education. Any standing to them. Do you understand? And the only way to get equal to them is you got to come out of their school and then educate your own children. Then you are getting equal education with them. They teaching their own and you teaching yours. Since he really don't, I mean, I can ask questions day and night. Even if he go and get something that every lesson that I got from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, for instance, if I asked him, who is the original man? If he say the original man is the Asiatic Black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe, he still ain't equal to me. The lesson is teaching him he's not equal to me. And not only that, I asked him, what does that mean? And see, then he don't know unless I tell him. Do you understand? So, I mean, if I give him an IQ test based on my questions, guess who's gonna fail? You see my point? So, that's the way he been doing us. He puts all white officers in the black community and make a whole lot of arrests and makes us all into criminals on paper. Do you understand? And then he puts us in his school system and half teaches us his lessons and then gives us a test on it and then makes us stupid on paper. He listening to me now. He know it's over. Yeah, all he can do is try to make noise. He can try to find something. They're reaching when I spanked my baby and I got cussed out. What was that about? Love for the baby? A hatred for the man who's standing up pulling the cover off of them and bringing an end to their rule over the world. I'm not just putting an end to him ruling us. He's through as a ruler over anybody. He just don't know it yet. I mean, they still think that this all stuff gonna blow over, gonna pass over. Wait and see. You just wait and see.
Nothing to see here. What is all this complaining? What is this march on Washington? I don't get it. I don't understand it. In fact, the very month of that march, which now it seems like every white liberal wants you to believe they were at. The very month of that march, white folks were asked by Newsweek what they thought about it. They said 2/3 of whites said that Dr. King and the movement were pushing too far, too fast, asking for too much, and too soon. The idea that this country was ready to hear this, even at the time when we know how vicious it was, is a lie. What does it say that white folks were in denial in 62 and 63? What does it say that if you've gone back to the 30s and asked the question? You think white folks were clear then? The 1890s. What did white folks say? Those southern editors of newspapers where I'm from, they would say, we get along fine with our Negroes down here. You Yankees would just leave us alone and stop messing in our business. Go back to 1850 and read what Dr. Samuel Cartwright, a well-respected member in good standing of the medical profession in this country, said not only was racism not a problem, there wasn't even a word for that yet, slavery wasn't a problem, so much so that he decided that any slave who would run away obviously had a mental illness. Because you have to be crazy to run away from bondage. So he came up with a term, he called it drapetomania. Don't even know what the root of that is, don't want to know, understand where the word came from, but that's what he called it, drapetomania. You must be crazy, you must be mentally ill to run away from your loving master. Denial. In every generation, 2007, 1963, the 30s, the 1890s, the 1850s, my point being that in every generation, members of the dominant group have said there is no problem. And in every generation, without fail, we have been wrong. And in every generation, people of color, those who are the targets of that oppression and subordination, have said there is a problem. And in every generation, without fail, they have been right. So the question for us today is, what are the odds, honestly, that people of color who have never gotten it wrong have suddenly lost their freaking minds and have suddenly become unable to see truth and to separate it from fiction? And counter to that, what are the odds that white folks who have never gotten it right yet have suddenly become highly, highly perceptive? The odds are pretty long. And again, it's not because white folks are insensitive or hard-hearted, let alone stupid, but it is that those of us who are white have the luxury of not knowing black and brown truth. We don't know because we don't have to know. We are not tested on it. If I don't know what people of color experience, what happens to me in this country? Virtually nothing. But if people of color don't know my reality, if people of color don't know white reality better than white folks have to know it, if they cannot regurgitate it to us better than we would ever be able to regurgitate it to ourselves, all hell breaks loose. So people of color are going to have to know white history, white literature, white art, white theater, white poetry, white drama. I know we don't call it that. That's sort of the point. When your stuff is the stuff against which everybody else's stuff is compared and found lacking. You don't have to name it. It's just the norm. That's why, for those still confused, we don't have White History Month, because we have several. They go by the tricky names of May and June, July, August, September. Pretty much any month that we have not designated as someone else's month, that's White History Month. But we take it for granted because we don't have to know other folks' reality. That's a privilege. That's an advantage. That's a head start. And it's one we must think about. See, that's the other piece of this, right? It's one thing for white folks to acknowledge racism. Because, you know, white liberals will. God bless.
You see, he's been listening. He's probably listened to a lot of the lectures of the messenger and the things that, you know, I mean, white people, when they hear about someone that the government deems to be an enemy, they go check it out. Then you find out that that's why a lot of them is rising up against their own government now. Because they found out they've been lied to. You are, in order to empathize with someone, you have to study something of their history and try and put yourself in their shoes and see if you could understand how they feel. He never tried to put himself in our shoes, because if he did that, he'd have to condemn himself. So just keep listening.
White liberals will acknowledge that racism is real. Oh my goodness, we should do something about that. Yes, we should. It's terrible, that racial profiling, that housing discrimination. My goodness, awful. Yes, it is. But just because we acknowledge racism and discrimination doesn't mean that we'll necessarily acknowledge the flip side of that. Doesn't mean that we will acknowledge that for everyone who's targeted by that discrimination, which we're willing to admit exists, there is somebody else not being targeted, guess whom, and that those individuals are elevated by definition and receive an advantage, receive a subsidy, receive a privilege in the process. You see, we like to talk about those who are down as if there is no up, right? We like to use language that obscures the interrelationship of down and up. Now, down has no meaning without an up. It is a relative term. But we talk about those at the bottom of the hierarchy, not paying attention to the fact that for everyone who's down, someone is above them, and they're above them because they're down. We use this language that makes it impossible. And when I say we, I don't mean like right-wing folk. I ain't even talking about them. I'm talking about nice, liberal, caring service providers. People who just want to help. Right? I just want to help the underprivileged. That's the word we use. I've used it before, I don't use it anymore, except in a speech like this. Right? We just want to help the underprivileged. But what's wrong with that word, folks? At least two things that ought to be pretty obvious to you. Right? Number one is it's a passively constructed term. Right? It's the passive voice, as my English teacher would say. Underprivileged doesn't imply that anybody did anything to anyone. It's just there's privilege and I will be damned. There you are under it. We can just figure out how you got down there. All the problems of the Western world. But we don't want to know how you got down there. No, that's why we came up with that bumper sticker. Stuff happens. That's the G-rated version. That's a bumper sticker that only a straight white upper middle class male could have made. Because anyone who isn't straight, anyone who isn't male, anyone who isn't white, anyone who isn't upper middle class knows that stuff doesn't just happen.
Let's take that a little bit. He's right. Boo-boo don't just happen. Boo-boo only happens as the body is rejecting something and getting rid of it. Huh? You know, when people reject truth of how we have been mistreated in this country, that's why all of that boo-boo from them comes to us, because they've rejected the truth and refuses to do anything about correcting themselves, not correcting us, correcting themselves. And because they wouldn't correct themselves, the word of God says, I have seen the affliction of my people. I have heard their cries by reason of their slave masters. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hands of the Americans. That's what it says. Because the boo-boo that we've been putting up with from them is because the whole body of them collectively have rejected the truth that would have stopped them from doing what they was doing. So they boo-boo all over us. Right? So no, you don't boo-boo. I remember when we used to be eating and you go to eating something and the old people said, look, boy, that ain't gonna make no boo-boo. You better go in there and eat you something. Huh? What is that to say? You know, you ain't eating enough to nourish yourself. You got to have more packages going into you if you be discarded later. Do you understand? You know, but they don't care about us. And any truth that demands that they treat us with justice, they just ignore. And boo-boo happens. Do you understand? All right.
Stuff gets done by people. Nothing is a coincidence. Nothing is random. It is an osmosis. And so we act as if it's some passive thing, but yet that's not the case. And the second problem with the term underprivileged is even bigger than the first one, is it's a relative term. Again, this is grammar. Now, you don't like this, you can disagree with anyone else I say tonight. If you have a problem with this piece right here, you must take it up with your third grade grammar teacher, because it is not on me. If we use the word underprivileged, it might be overprivileged, but use that word in polite conversation. Indeed, it doesn't exist in any dictionary to be found on the planet. If you don't believe me.
And it didn't. The word overprivileged don't exist in the dictionaries up to that time. You go online now and you see that it's been upgraded to 2011 or 2010. Now overprivileged is in there. But you get some of your dictionaries that predates and you won't find the word overprivileged in them. Strange, huh? Yeah. It's in there now, though. In the new ones, they putting it in there.
Go back to your rest hall, go back to your apartment, go back to your home, go back to your place of employment. Tomorrow, I want you to punch in two little words. The first one, underprivileged. Make no mistake, your spell check is going to recognize that word. It's in their dictionary. They can give you the definition. They can give you the synonym. They can give you the antonym. They can show you the phonetic way in which you should spell it. Now come down one line, type in the word overprivileged, and watch how fast that little red line pops up. That line which says, nope, you're an idiot. Making up words that don't exist. Try again and get back to us. But if there's an underprivileged, there must be an overprivileged. Why don't we talk about it? Because that would require that we acknowledge that if there are 2 to 3 million people being targeted for race-based housing discrimination because they are people of color every year, that is 2 to 3 million more places I can live. If people of color are being targeted and profiled and I'm not, that is an advantage. It may have real consequences, A lot of privilege isn't about material acquisition, so please know this. When I talk about white privilege, I don't even mean money necessarily. For some, it definitely translates to that. For some, it has certainly meant that. But even for those white folks who don't have that money, white privilege is real at the psychological level. Well, I grew up for the first 18 years of my life in an 850 square foot apartment where the plumbing was always leaking, the air conditioning was constantly busted. We had no savings. We ran cars into the ground until they just stopped running, took no vacations, had no assets, had no credit that wasn't bad credit. So I was one of those white folks who certainly didn't have class privilege, and yet I had the knowledge that I was perceived in school as highly capable, not because of my class background, which was no great shakes, but because I was seen as a bright, capable white child, and students of color, who were every bit as capable as I, were tracked low while I was tracked high. I could make bad grades, and I never seemed to fall out of favor in those types of classes because I was seen as simply underperforming, not quite living up to my standards, you know. So I received the psychological edge of knowing that in those classrooms, if I didn't do well, and I often didn't, I was a bad student. But if I didn't do well, I never had to worry that that would be ascribed to my race. I never had to worry that someone would say, well, of course he's not good at that because, you know, he's white. Because unless I was going to be trying out for a job that involved jumping or dancing, what stereotype exactly is working against me as a white person? There aren't many. But for people of color, it's a whole different ballgame. Knowing that if they underperform in an academic environment, knowing that if they end a sentence with a preposition when they answer that question in class, or if they mispronounce a word, or if they simply answer the question wrong, they have to wonder whether they dropped the ball not just for themselves, but for all those coming after them who look like them, whose presence on that campus or in that job complex, in that office is constantly under scrutiny, constantly being questioned, constantly being double guessed, second and third and fourth guessed. Do they really belong here? That's what it means to be white, is never having to worry that you're going to trigger a series of negative stereotypes about your group, and if you're not able to overcome them, your opportunities will be limited. Yes, white women will face that on a gender level, but on a racial level, those who are white will never have to worry that their missteps, that our missteps will be attributed to our racial defect of some sort. And the research is very clear that that privilege, having one less thing to worry about, having one less thing to sweat in the classroom, trying to get the loan at the bank, at the job, or whatever the case might be, that has significant dividends. Because to have one less thing to sweat in a competitive society is the thing that separates oftentimes success from failure, or big success from medium success, from smaller success. And the research is very clear that on an academic environment in particular, those persons who are constantly having to worry about whether or not their performance is going to trigger that negative group stereotype, that the mere anxiety caused by worrying about that is enough to drive down academic performance on standardized tests and in classroom performance, even when they are equally or better qualified than their counterparts who don't have to think about that. So it's a huge advantage to have that one less thing to concern oneself with, to not have the burden of representation, to not have to, in the parlance of the modern era, hold it down for white people. Because we as white folks know we don't have to do that. We also know that what other white people do won't stick to us. We have 19 men who happen to be Arab and Muslim who fly planes into buildings, and we have otherwise rational human beings running around insisting that we should stop and search everyone like them at the airports. We did not do this or anything even remotely like it when Tim McVeigh and Terry Nichols brought down the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, nor would we have. We didn't do it when the Unabomber, crazy-ass white man in the woods of Montana, blowing people up for 20 years before they caught him. It didn't stick to the rest of us who were white men. The Olympic Park bomber, Eric Rudolph, puts a bomb in Olympic Village in Atlanta in '96, blows up a gay bar, blows up a family planning clinic. He too then runs off to the woods. As a side note, I have no idea what it is about white people and the woods. But whatever it is, probably explains why black folks don't do a lot of camping. So it doesn't stick to us. There have been over 125 family planning centers, some of which provide abortion services, many of which do not, that have been bombed or burned in the last 20 years. And every single one of them, according to the FBI, have been white. They've mostly been men. They claim to be Christian. Different lecture for a different night. 125 or more. 125, McVeigh Nichols is 127, Unabomber is 128, Eric Rudolph is 129. 129 confirmed terrorists who are white in this country in the last 20 years. It sticks to nobody who's white. 19 Arab Muslims, and it sticks to everyone who is either 700 million Arab folk on the planet, 1.5 billion Muslims on the planet. To assume that we know something about them based on the acts of 19 is to commit what any statistician will tell you is sampling error. It is mathematical illiteracy. And yet we do it because we can. Privilege, not having to worry about it. But let me suggest to you something, because the title of this talk, after all, is The Pathology of Privilege. And I want to be very clear that privilege of not thinking about it, that privilege of not having to know someone else's reality, that privilege of being able to ignore it, and the privilege of benefiting from the inequality, having a certain leg up, actually is very dangerous. And not just for those who don't have it, but there's actually a downside for those who do. And this is important, right? Because in a country like ours, which encourages us to take advantage of our advantages, if I tell you that you have privilege, your first inclination is not to try to get rid of that. That's not the culture in which we live. But I want to suggest to you there are reasons why even those of us who benefit in relative terms from racism and institutional white supremacy should care about this, not out of some altruistic, I want to help other people impulse, but because it is actually dangerous for us as well. Because if you know the history of the whole concept of whiteness, if you know the history of the whole concept of the white race, where it came from and for what reason, you know that it was a trick, and it's worked brilliantly. See, prior to the mid to late 1600s in the colonies of what would become the United States, there was no such thing as the white race. Those of us of European descent did not refer to ourselves by that term really ever before then. In fact, in the old countries of Europe, we had spent most of our time killing each other. We didn't love each other. We weren't one big happy family. The side of my family that comes from Scotland, hell, they didn't even worry about fighting people outside of Scotland. Highlanders and Lowlanders just fought the hell out of each other. So there was no white race, but in the colonies of what would become the United States, what did we see in the 1660s?
What did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say God revealed? They are a race of devils. Wilt thou place in it such as make mischief in it and shed blood? I mean, they just, been shedding blood ever since. Didn't make no difference whose. You wrestling with the flesh of him. When we not wrestling with the flesh of him. When I say we, I'm talking about the messengers of God. We wrestling with that wicked mind that's making that flesh do what it do. Do you understand? That's the root of the problem. We don't go after the symptom. We go to the root. Do you understand? He's bearing witness. But listen.
1670s. We began to see that Africans of indentured servant status, many of them not enslaved yet, they were not necessarily permanently enslaved. Some were, others were indentured like many poor Europeans for periods of 7 to 11 years. They could work off their indenture and then they would be free labor technically. Realized, as did the white indentured servants, the Europeans who hadn't even been called white yet, that they had a lot of things in common, like the fact that they were all getting their clock cleaned by the elite. And so they would get together more than our history books taught us, to foment rebellion against the elite, to try to get a better deal for themselves on the basis of economic necessity and economic justice. And what did the elite do? When you see that you're outnumbered by black and white folks who are penniless, landless, peasants, you have to do one of two things. You either have to kill them all, but you can't do that because who's going to work? Rich folks weren't going to. They had to get poor people to work. The whole point was to be a person of leisure back in those days. That was the goal. Was not.
And that bears witness to what the other report from some of the economists said. In order for the economy to do well, some people have to do bad. They have to suffer. Do you understand? Wealthy people, they didn't get wealthy by working. They got wealthy by getting other people to do their work for them. If a man want to keep you, uh, understand something. If a man want to keep you a slave without you actually realizing that that's what is happening, then that man needs to control your job, your income, and he also needs to control your necessities by way of controlling the markets and the prices and the gasoline and all of that. And once he knows what you are being paid, then he can uh, set prices on the goods and commodities and services that he knows you got to have. And he can keep you living from check to check without you ever realizing that's what he's doing. But he better not let you get smart enough to start adding up what's going on. Don't there's a problem. And then that's what's happening now. You know, once a person becomes self-aware and aware of his surroundings, the day for holding him in slavery is numbered. And that is they create these little classes and stuff like that and make you think that you doing fine when all of the time they robbing you and depriving you of your real freedom to create. The mind needs to be free from worry, um, for the best of the creative potential to manifest itself. Do you understand? Certain things the mind can create under stress, but for the most part, in order for you to be able to see the real potential of your mind, you have to be put in a situation where you have no stress, no worry. You see? That's why we have to remove these rulers, because in this whole big universe, I want to show you how small their minds are. In this whole big universe, they don't see that there's enough of it, it's big enough for each individual to own 2 or 3 planets and still have empty. I mean, they want to stay here and rot the earth. They actually burying stuff in the earth that would kill the earth if Allah did not intervene. And that's not me just talking. The book says the time of the dead is come, and the time of the judgment, that thou shouldest destroy them who destroy the earth. This is what's going on now. Their minds are, they like the fish that you put in a bowl. The earth is the bowl. Their minds have grown to the size as far as it can grow in this environment, in the earth. They don't care about the universe out there. If you just get out in it, it would broaden your thinking. Your mind would grow and just unlimited future. They'd rather limit themselves to this little bowl that we swimming around in. We got to get them out the way. They've served their purpose, and now even they tired of themselves. Anytime a white man get tired of the foolishness that the white man is putting down, you know it's done got rough. Huh? And that's what happens when you listen to truth. The truth, after a while, compels you to speak against falsehood. You can remain silent if you wanted to. You know, it's like putting water in a enclosed container and putting fire upon it. How long is it going to be before that container is compelled to burst by the force of that water vapor that has to expand, has to get out? The truth has to get out. The truth has to get out. Truth is like a seed. You crush it into the earth, you think you through with it, you see it coming up after a while. It got to get out. So, even when they thought they was hiding the fact that they are devils. He never was hiding it. Well, speak of the devil. It had to get out. Huh? It was getting out all the time. It just wasn't nobody. He was hiding in plain sight. Even made people think in his movies that he was just making up that stuff. That was the truth getting out, calling it science fiction. Truth in a fictional play. The greatest trick that the devil played on man was to convince man that he didn't exist. Huh? Hey, looking around for the devil, and the devil right in front of him. Huh? That's the truth. In the flesh. The devil ain't the flesh. He's in the flesh. God is not the flesh. He is in the flesh. Do you understand? Oh, praises due to Allah. Flesh is just flesh, just like a house is a house. What kind of house it is depends on who moves in it. Do you understand? All praises due to Allah. So just listen.
Not to work. So you can kill them all. You didn't want to kill them all. You have to do the work yourself, not to build your own levee, build your own house. No, pick your own tobacco, harvest your own cotton. No, we're not going to do any of that. So you can't kill them, but you can co-opt them. And so the elite in Virginia, for example, in the colony, begins to give certain carrots to people of European descent, saying things like, you know, we're going to let you own a little land, not much, but just a little. And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. Now you're free labor. And by the way, once you're free labor, you get 50 acres of land just because you're free labor, see. So we're going to cut you in on this deal. We're going to let you enter into contracts. We're going to let you testify in court. And here's the best of all, we're going to put you on the slave patrol to keep those people in line, right? The idea was you're still going to get your clock clean. We still don't like you. We still aren't going to really empower you or change your economic subordination, but we're going to make you honorary members of this team, and you're going to help us keep those other people down. So it got a little taste of power, and it did effectively divide and conquer those coalitions. Those rebellions began to stop almost instantly. Fast forward to the Civil War era, you have rich white folks in the South, where I come from, standing up and openly admitting that the reason they're prepared to secede from the Union, and the only reason they ever articulated publicly, ever, was to maintain and extend slavery and white supremacy, not only where it already existed, but into the newly acquired, that is to say, stolen territories from Mexico to the West. That was what they said. Now we lie about it. We say it wasn't about slavery, but it was about states' rights. Yes, the right of the states to keep and maintain slaves, exactly. But back then they had no shame, so they didn't try and cover it up. They openly said it, but once again, the rich didn't want to go do the work. Are you kidding? No, they're going to get poor people to go fight for them. And the poor folks didn't even own slaves. Now think, how do you get poor people who don't even own the shirt on their back, let alone slaves, to go fight to keep your slaves for you? You've got to convince them that their skin is more important than their economic interest, because think about it, if I am a farmer who has to...
How many jobs do you suppose is created when people that are reservists are called up to go fight and they die in the war zone? And it's jobs that's got them. Their temporary replacement becomes a permanent replacement, huh? Somebody got them a permanent job, huh? Wars have been fought every so many years. They try to keep something going somewhere to give the impression that everything is going well. You'll be surprised at the game that's been ran on everybody. And it's time for it to stop. The truth has come, and falsehood must vanish.
Charge you $1 a day or $2 a week to work on your farm and harvest that tobacco or pick that cotton, but you can get a black person to do it for free because you own them. Who's going to get the job? Not me. In other words, slavery actually undermined the wages and the wage base, the economic floor of the typical white working class or low-income person. But they were told, if these people are free, they're going to take your job. No, fool, they got your job. That's the point. And so at some level, again, working class white people being harmed by white privilege, relatively being advantaged, right? Being given a leg up, being given a membership to the club, but in absolute terms being kept economically subordinated by the very thing that gave them a sense of superiority. How's that for irony? In the present era, this hasn't stopped. This is not ancient history. Now we have people running around insisting that we should close the border with Mexico because if we don't, the wages of working class people will continue to fall. The implication being that the only reason workers are paid like crap in this country is because the border is open. But if you believe that, you would actually have to believe that if that border were closed and all these owners of capital and industry would just say, oh, well, you figured us out. Here, it's a raise. Do we really believe that the only thing keeping bosses from paying people more is the presence of low-wage, medium, semi-skilled labor from south of this artificial border? Is that really what we believe? We know that if that border is closed, it isn't going to be closed to capital. It isn't going to be closed to goods. If you have a border that can be crossed by capital looking for the highest return on investment or goods looking for the highest price, but labor is...
See, this just shows that you notice, you remember NAFTA, the trade agreement? Well, when they start trying to put tariffs back on imported goods, notice a lot of the congressmen was fighting against that because American companies were having goods produced overseas, even though it's saying made in China, made in Taiwan, made in, that was American companies getting that slave labor there and shipping it back to America and competing with some who were patriotic, who had to pay their labor. And in order to be able to compete, those companies that was in America that was totally Americanized companies, they were dependent on those tariffs to make sure that them people couldn't come up, bring their goods back over here. Those other companies couldn't bring their goods back over here and run them out of business by selling so cheap. Do you understand? But what did the Republicans call it? We can't have protectionism. Protectionism. Well, what is that? Another way of saying we don't want you taxing us for being over here getting this slave labor, and if we want to come back here and compete with these patriots, patriotic businesses who keeping their business in America, that's their fault. They deserve it. They ought to leave. See, they trying to. I told you, they're so busy practicing racism and hatred on us who hadn't done nothing to them, that they were so busy looking at us that they didn't take time to keep a watch over what was happening with them. Huh? And now their country is fast becoming a third world nation, and they ain't got sense enough to see it. When I say third world, I'm talking about as far as the economic distance between the rich and the poor. You notice you go to a lot of those countries that they got set up shop in, the people who are in charge, they live in large. But you go out amongst their people and they living in squalor and filth. Of course, we used to that, right? I mean, we grew up in projects and ghettos, stuff all over America. And we know about people who have plenty and people who have nothing. We done had nothing all our life. Till the point when we got what we considered, I should say, we done had less than nothing. Because we've lived below poverty level, what they call poverty level. And when we got up to poverty level, which is nothing to them, we thought we had something, right? And give us $30,000 and we sell our soul for $30,000 a year, the average one of us. They even got a commercial on there, man, number 44, and you know, he get out there and it's so silly. And number 44, and then he starts spiking and going on, right? Did you ever notice the number on his jersey? The jersey that he had on had 30 on it. What was the subliminal message? What does a black man that's grown, and I'm not talking about in his 20s, I'm not talking about even in his early 30s, but 40 and up, and you get in a commercial like that and do that in front of your children? What does that make us look like to our children? What was Judas' price for selling Jesus out? Now you see why his jersey had the number 30 on. You see? We go and do anything for money, disgrace ourselves, knowing how the world already looks at us. And that's another reason they mad at Dr. Cosby. Because even in his joking and whatnot, it's real stuff. It ain't him just, he's making things that happen for real look funny. I'll show you an example. We'll come back to this in a minute. You know, and that's why they was after him. Let me see. I think I got a little bit of it here.
So she had to go visit her mother.
And she left. I waited and waited until she's gone long enough, to be at her mother's house. And then I got up and I went to bed. She won't let me go to sleep early. But if she's not there, she can't see where I am. So I put the pajamas on. I got in the bed. So the phone rang. And I got out on my side and walked over to her side where the phone is. I don't have a phone on my side because my phone wakes her up. So you thought it was only happening to you, didn't you? So I said, hello? It's a woman. So she says, I represent the so-and-so security company. She says, who am I talking to? I said, well, I'm half owner of the house. So she says, well, do you know that there's an alarm going off? I said, I don't hear anything. She said, well, it's showing up that there's a malfunction on the front door of the building. So I said, okay, well, just a minute. I put the phone down. I went to the front door, and there's bolts and keys. So you unbolt and turn the key, open, slam it, bolt, turn it, unbolt, unlock, open, slam it, jiggle it, bang it, bolt it back, turn the key. I went back up. I said, how's it look? She said, it still shows there's a malfunction. She says, and what is your name? I said, husband. She said, what is your code name? I said, I don't have a code name. She said, yes, you do. I said, ma'am, I have to tell you, I don't drink, and I don't do drugs or anything. I know for sure I don't have a code name. I just have my regular name, which my mother gave me. And my wife even calls me by that name. She said, well, sir, I'm going to have to call the police because you don't know your code. I said, ma'am, they're not going to do anything because I have a cold face. I said, just 1 second, please. So I put her on hold, and it's blinking, and I punch down another line, and I dial my mother-in-law's house. The phone is ringing, and my wife picked up. She said, hello. I said, oh, I'm so happy to reach you. She said, hi, honey, how are you? I'm home. She said, I'm at mom's. I said, yeah, just a minute, dear. What's the matter? What's the matter? I said, there's nothing wrong, but the lady from the security company, she said, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything, dear. Just 1 second. So, and I do a conference. So, punched down the conference, and I punched down my wife. I said, hello? My wife said, hello? And the woman said, hello? I said, all right. So I said, ma'am, the lady said, yes. I said, this is my wife. So the woman said, yes, how are you? My wife says, I'm fine. So my wife says, what is the problem? So the woman said, well, there's a malfunction on the front door of the building that this gentleman is in. So my wife said, did you touch that front door? I said, no, I didn't. The woman said, yes, he did. I said, now look, lady, you gotta, there is a timeline here. I touched the door after you told me there was something wrong. She said, oh yeah, okay. So the woman said, and what is your name? She said, Mrs. Cosby. And the woman said, that is correct. She said, and what is your code name? My wife said, Pearl. She said, that's correct. She said, and I just want to tell you, Mrs. Cosby, how wonderful it is to speak to someone who has a code name that makes some sense and not a bunch of pervert things going out that you have to hear and say, oh, I said, thank you. But I was in the Andes and we were all, and I saw the pearls and the people, and I said, oh my God, I've got the name. The woman said, oh yes, I plan to go there, and we're going to do all of this and that, and say the same colors and the soap. You don't mind if oh yes, it's a wonderful place, and you can see the things. She said, by the way, if this man is your husband, my wife said, yes. She said, he says he doesn't have a code name. So my wife said, yes, he does. I said, no, I don't. My wife said, you do have a code name. She said, and I told you your code name. I said, you never told me anything. You never said, she said, I told you your code name twice, as a matter of fact, and then I told you to write it down. I said, well, I don't know anything about a code name. So the woman said, and what is his code name? My wife said, Bill. I was going to have this woman reported because, no, you can't do that. But I didn't report her because I didn't know how to spell. That's the sound she made to keep from laughing. My wife said, Bill, and this woman went, and then she said to my wife, Mrs. Cosby, please don't be dismayed. I have one of these at home too.
So, they don't want you and I to be dignified. I mean, you can do things, I stand up here and I do a lot of, I use a lot of language that there are other words for, but they are inappropriate for me to be standing up here using. Do you understand? And, we have children in here. And even if it's not any children in here, my children might see it one day. And here he didn't just start having a conscience about how people view us. You heard him tell jokes about how he stand up and he called Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and asked them about, maybe need to tone down that, that so much profanity. And, so that was him, he didn't make it public. They did in their jokes, right? Okay. So he didn't just get like this. Now he going around the country lecturing. Now all of a sudden, white folks sent a bunch of white women out there to say he's immoral and he done did something. Then when you corner him and ask him, did he rape you? No. Well, what are you doing? What are you accusing him of? I mean, yeah, he's assaulted. How many times the police done accused after they accused Rodney King of assaulting them? Well, didn't they? And got away with it. And we're looking at it. Do you know if somebody grabbed your hand or whatnot, that can be called assault? Did you know that? These people play these kind of games. But it's all done to try to make ignorant black people turn a deaf ear to a man who was offering them good advice. What do you see wrong with him telling people to be more like me? I'm one of them black Muslims he was talking about. What have I done to any of you that you think was so terrible that you wouldn't want nobody to be like me? You mean the world would be a worse place if more people was like me? This is your chance, white folks. Come on in here and tell the people. What about these people who accuse me of lying and going on to people and whatnot? Won't they come in here and tell you what's so bad about me? I mean, I could point to any of my followers. I'm not saying I don't have no faults. All my followers got some faults. But I'll put them next to anybody y'all out there teaching. You know, it's a man on a motel, and one of my followers getting ready to leave there because he's managing it for him. He done left me messages, and I talked to him, and he all but begged me, would you please find me somebody else to take his place? Because he don't want nobody other than somebody who followed me. Muslims are very, very valuable people because they are honest. And in a dishonest world, even a crook wants an honest man handling his money. We ain't worried about it. We got another brother working at a store, and they all but begging him don't leave. We going? We got to go. You hate us so much, some of the very people who won't even come and spend a dime in our business, as though we some terrible people or something. But they want us to come and work for them. That's to keep you from working for yourself. See? Oh, I've been knowing this. I just ain't said much. But you know, you live in a world that is the very foundation of it is wicked, wickedness. That's why they all. If I say this, let me show you. Money talks. Finish it. See? That's not what righteous people say. That's what that's a corrupt mind that thinks like that. I don't have to be asked to prove what I say. I'm proving it as I'm saying it. Let's listen to Mr. Wise a little bit more.
Change to its country of origin, how is that going to work to the benefit of working people? By definition, it doesn't. By definition, it immiserates the working class. Divide and conquer. The best example of all, perhaps, in the contemporary era, in the greater New Orleans area after Katrina. Here you have two communities that were the most hard hit. Lower Ninth Ward, mostly black community, 94% African American, about 40% official poverty rate. Heavy working class community. And right across the canal, St. Bernard Parish, Chalmette, 95% white, also working class, high levels of poverty, economically very similar. And at the end of the day, in those first few days of September 2005, more similar than they probably would have realized. Because when those levees broke, they all got their stuff jacked. They all got their stuff destroyed. But if you had asked white folks in Chalmette, and I've done it, who was the cause of the problems in the greater New Orleans area prior to that flooding, they would have pointed across that canal at those black folks, wouldn't have called them black folks, and would have said, there, that's the problem. 70% of the white folks in St. Bernard Parish voted for David Duke, white supremacist, neo-Nazi, former head of the largest Ku Klux Klan group in the United States when he ran for governor in 1991. 7 out of 10 gladly voted for him because he was blaming black problems, and they bought it. What's the irony? The irony is that while they were blaming black people for their problems, while they were blaming black people for the conditions of the greater New Orleans area in which they lived, nobody was paying attention, least of all they, to the fact that these white elite politicians, either in Baton Rouge or in Washington, whose job it was to secure those levees, to make sure that levy funds were spent in the proper way and that they were spent at all, those mostly elite politicians did nothing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just the black folks in the lower Ninth Ward they didn't care about. They really couldn't have given a rat's ass about those poor and working class white folks either. And yet, when the people of Chalmette, people of St. Bernard Parish got back into session, first time they had a city council meeting, parish council meeting after the flooding, the lights aren't even on yet. The water isn't even hooked up. And the first order of business was to pass an ordinance saying that you rent property in St. Bernard Parish to anyone who wasn't a blood relative. Now, I'll leave it to your imagination as to why you'd want to pass a law. That law had never existed before. But now that it's been emptied out and you don't know who might come back, that's a damn good way to keep black people out, isn't it? Because if you're 95% white to begin with, if you pass an ordinance that says that, that's a great, you can't say no blacks need apply. You can't say no blacks allowed, but that was an ingenious way to get around the law. Now, they got caught. There was a lawsuit threatening, they got rid of the ordinance. But my point in bringing it up is to say, once again, divide and conquer is working. These white folks in Chalmette need to march across that canal and join hands with the black folks who've been sitting there more than willing to work with them for an awful long time, and march on Baton Rouge and march on DC and march on the Corps of Engineers and recognize their commonality of interest. But the whiteness and the lure of whiteness has tricked these have nothing in their bank account white people into believing that they got more in common with the rich white folks on St. Charles Avenue that didn't lose anything in that flooding than they have in common with the black working class folks who live about 500 yards away. That's what white privilege does to white folks, but that's not all. It also creates an intense anxiety, like a mental dysfunction, an emotional anxiety and distress. If you're privileged, after all, if you're the top dog, if you have all the advantage, you're constantly afraid of who's gaining on you. You're constantly afraid of who's coming to take what you have. We've got to close the border. They're coming to take our stuff. We got to worry about terrorists. They're coming to take our stuff. We got to get them before they get us. Preventative war. We got to stop them. That's what privilege will do for you, because those who have it are constantly anxious. A study in June of 2004 in the Journal of the American Medical Association, which received very little attention, found that in the United States, the rates of anxiety disorder, depression, and substance abuse-related mental disorders are twice the global average, 5 times the rate in Nigeria. How is it that the most powerful and privileged people on earth can have so much more anxiety than people who live in war-torn areas? Civil war, political corruption, amazing problems, often famine, all kinds of hardships that for the most part we don't see, at least in the same abundance, let's say, in the United States, and yet it's here. That the greatest level of anxiety, I would suggest that the reason that happens is because it's the privilege that generates the anxiety. It's that constant fear of keeping up and staying ahead that generates the anxiety, the mentality of entitlement, the mentality that says this is our world and we get to make the rules in this world. And then we come to find out not so much. We don't deal with setback very well, those who are the dominant group. And then real world intrudes on us. It's like a psychological come apart, like a meltdown. So when those people in Littleton, Colorado had their school shot up at Columbine, when the folks in Santee, California, Santana High School, Springfield, Oregon, Thurston High School, all of those nice white spaces, which from the mid-90s to the early 2000s seemed like at least once or twice a year there was another one of these mass school shootings, and almost every single one of them committed by a white male of upper middle class background in a place where everyone said this wasn't supposed to happen here. Because privilege allowed them to let down their guard to the dysfunction and pathology that they thought only existed over there. So we don't notice that Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris are building 35 bombs in the basement. Because privilege means I don't even have to know what my kids are doing. I ain't seen them in like a week. I'm taking classes at Home Depot. No kids of color could have gotten away with that. 35 bombs in what basement? A. B, if folks of color roll up to the Ace Hardware looking for bomb supplies, they are not going to be sold them. But these white middle class folks drive up in nice cars looking to get some pipe bomb material, some explosives, some real short fuses. And it's for a science fair experiment. Sure, here, you know. All right, privilege. Usually it works out pretty well. 364 days out of the year, it goes okay. But if day 365 is April 20th of 1999 and your kid goes to Columbine High School, you really don't care much about the other 364. Because when you have that privilege of living in that bubble and you don't have to think about what you don't have to think about, remember, there may come a time when you have to think about it. When 9/11 happened, notice the different ways that white folks and folks of color by and large reacted. Everybody was scared, everybody was angry, everybody was upset, everybody's freaking out. But now, there were only some folks who went in front of microphones and said the following, and they were all white that I saw. Why do they hate us? Why? Why? Why would anyone hate the United States of America? I don't get it. See, people of color, they didn't.
Well, the problem is, in order to do the wrong that has been done by white people to so many people, including especially us, they had to convince themselves that it was right. You see, the first one that the deceiver deceives is himself. You see, he deceived himself into thinking that he was justified. They even started teaching in the school system, for instance, what was done to us. They started teaching in the school system that we were just naturally inferior and that, they reduced us to the level of, didn't even have to refer to us as men and women. And so our slaves, our Negroes, is that kind of terminology. And then once he convinces himself from generation to generation and just passes that on from one generation to the next, he actually believed. He done brainwashed his own self. And that's the worst thing you can do. The worst lie you can tell is to stand up and lie to yourself. As they got what that poet said, to thine own self. To thine own self. You fool everybody else, but don't never lie to yourself. Huh? But he lied to himself. And that's what the hippie movement was about. When those young white teenagers and stuff started walking out of their wealthy families' homes and became what they call flower children. Huh? They discovered that they had been lied to by their parents, and that the whole system that they was so trusting in was nothing but a lie. And so then you hear people come out there, why do they hate us? If you'd have told yourself the truth, you'd know why people hate you. You sow the wind and then you wonder why the world went. Huh? You know why they have to have, just like these conference rooms that are actually just ways to keep up with what you're thinking and saying, which I want him to know what I'm thinking and saying. And but I mean, they got real-time satellites that you can GPS, and if you can do that, just think what they got. But anyway, they done did so much wrong to so many people that they so paranoid that they got to watch everybody. That's one thing about goodness. When you do good and have did good everywhere you went, the last thing you worried about is who's slipping up behind you. But when you done evil everywhere you went, it makes you paranoid. Do you understand? The wicked fleeth when none pursueth. Huh? That guilty conscience. Do you understand? You notice, ain't none of them interrupting me. Anybody typing anything? Whatsoever, the book says God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap.
Statements. And it's not because folks of color hate this country, but folks of color have historically a love-hate relationship with the society, loving certain things about it, hating other things about it. But here's the more important point. To be a person of color in this country is to always have to know what the other guy thinks. It is to always have to know what other people think about you. If you don't, if you for 1 minute forget what other people might think about you, your life is in danger. But to be the dominant group is to have that luxury, or to think you do. To think you do. Of not having to care what other people think. Because you're the big dog. You're the top. You're the king of the hill. You don't have to worry about what other people think. That's privilege. You don't have to know. You can sort of laugh it off. At least we thought we could. We could have that attitude that says, what are you going to do to us? We're big and bad. We spend $400 billion a year on defense, fool. If you come for us, we will bomb you back to the Stone Age. And if you're already there, we'll take you back to whatever the hell came before the Stone Age. Because we can. And then 19 guys with $37 worth of box cutters, $1,000 worth of plane tickets, and a pissy attitude pretty much said, okay, I'll tell you what. You spend your $400 billion a year on defense, and here's the deal. Me and my boys are bringing these buildings down anyway. How do you like us now? So privilege didn't allow us to see that the rest of the world doesn't view us the way we view us. Maybe we'd have been better off knowing that. Maybe we would have been better off for decades knowing that the rest of the world doesn't view us in the same liberatory terms that we sometimes view ourselves. Now, people of color in this country already knew better. Because when they asked white folks and black folks before the invasion of Iraq, good idea, bad idea, the folks without privilege said, Black folks were just like overwhelming. No. asked white folks, and 2/3 of white America said, hell yes, we must do this. They're going to greet us like liberators. See, that's privilege speaking. Privilege says that surely they know we're liberated. Surely they know. Rumsfeld said we're going to be greeted like liberators. Dick Cheney said it. They know so much about that. Surely this will work out well. People of color, no. Because folks of color know that even if you don't have very much, folks without much will kill you for the little bit they have. Well, you can invade Washington Heights tonight, but I don't recommend it. You can invade the South Bronx tonight, but I do not recommend it. Because the folks who were there may know full well they don't have much. But they will indeed kill you to keep what little bit they have. And see, victims have long memories. And so the people we claim to be liberating don't forget that their oppression came at the hands of a man that we supported all of those years. They don't forget that. But those who create that victimization have short memories. We have the luxury of forgetting, so we go in because privilege says it'll work. Privilege says it'll work. Privilege says it will work. And then we come to find out maybe it doesn't work as well as.
You know why white people forget all of the evil that they do? It is because of the nature of the mind that's in them. The evil mind does not remember the evil that it does because it comes natural. Just like a good person don't remember all of the good that they do because they didn't do it having to think about it. They just did it. But when an evil person does a good thing, he will say, I went out of my way for you. That is another way of, and he won't never forget that. Because that's something that's not natural in his natural thinking process. To do good is not in the natural thinking process of an evil mind. Just like a good person, they don't remember they're good, but you can rest assured they remember all the evil they done did. Yeah. Well, you think I stand up here and tell you I know I ain't been the best person. I remember the evil I've done. I don't have to be reminded of some good things I did, but I ain't have to be reminded of the evil I done did. I know what I done did. That stuff it's there. That's one of the things that make you repent. Is that your conscience? You just can't rest with that. I mean, it bothers evil people to think of some good they did for you. They try to figure out a way to undo that. You think I'm lying? Look at what the Supreme Court did with the civil rights thing of trying to protect your right to vote. They didn't rest till they took it back, huh? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It bothers them. They still want to take the Affordable Health Care Act. They want to get rid of that. Why? Because they're devils. Babylon is fallen, and it's become the habitation not of saints, but of devils. And if I can't help you, you through. Because your sins have reached unto heaven. They ain't just in your mind no more. Your sins is walking around and talking, and everybody see it. And God have remembered your iniquities. And now the cup you done filled, he gonna double it back on you. I'm going to cut it right there. It's late. Folks hungry and thirsty. But before I let you go, did anyone have a question they want to ask me? You know, and I want to tell all of you something. Instead of texting me that somebody's saying something about me negative, why don't you text them and ask them why they don't come and confront me instead of talking about me behind my back? I mean, people like that, I know he ain't got nothing. You know, he don't realize that's libel. You know, you say things about people that you can't prove and put it in writing, that's called libel. You better be ready to prove what you say. If I can't prove what I say, I ain't gonna say it. You know, just because we ain't going after, I'm not gonna haul you into no court nowhere. But you're doing a very foolish thing, and you may do that to somebody who don't mind taking you in there. And you know, you better stop getting out and putting something in writing that you can't defend. Yeah, that's freedom of press. But if you put something in press that you can't defend, then you know you may regret it later. You know. So I like to talk to people who disagree with me. That's what I'm here for. To argue with you in the best manner. To try to save your life. You know. So don't have half of that half of mine you got to talk to me. Have a whole half of mine to come talk to me. And I will show you that it's not me that's mistaken. It's you. So may Allah bless us all, keep us safe and in our right minds. May Allah's Salaam Alaikum.
Your conference recording has stopped.
When last time you cleaned that lens on that thing?